Hello, Army. Welcome back to the K-pop news channel. Have you ever watched a moment so quickly that almost everyone missed what really happened? During the interview with GQ magazine, something unexpected unfolded between Taehyung and Jungkook. A moment so brief that most Army didn't notice it the first time. Right in the middle of the conversation, while everyone else was laughing and talking, Taehyung suddenly turned his head and his eyes locked onto Jungkook. Not a casual glance, not a passing look. It was a sharp, intense stare that lasted only seconds, but somehow carried a weight that fans are still trying to understand. Why did Taehyung look at Jungkook like that? What exactly happened in that split second that made Army rewind the video again and again and again? Because once you notice that stare, you realize this moment might not be as simple as it first seemed. The moment passes quickly in the video, almost too quickly. The room is relaxed. Laughter moves around the set as the members continue answering questions for GQ magazine. Everyone appears comfortable, casual, and natural in front of the camera. But then something shifts. While the conversation continues, Taehyung suddenly turns his head slightly. His expression changes in a way that is difficult to explain. The playful atmosphere around him doesn't disappear, but for a brief moment his attention is no longer on the group. It locks onto one person, Jungkook. At first glance, it seems like nothing. Just another glance between members who have spent years together. But when fans began replaying the clip, slowing it down frame by frame, the atmosphere inside that moment started to feel different. Taehyung's gaze isn't casual. It's steady, focused, almost sharp. The kind of look that feels loaded with something unspoken. And what makes the moment even stranger is that Jungkook seems to sense it. His expression shifts slightly, as if he notices the attention directed toward him. For a split second, the energy between them becomes strangely intense, subtle enough to miss, but strong enough to make people question it once they see it. The rest of the room keeps moving. Voices continue. Someone laughs. But the camera captures that silent exchange like a quiet storm passing through a calm sky. That's when the internet started asking questions. Why did Taehyung suddenly look at Jungkook like that? Some fans believe it was simply a natural reaction. Two close friends sharing a quiet moment in the middle of a chaotic interview. Others are convinced it was something deeper. Something emotional. Something that hinted at an inside joke, an unspoken thought, or a reaction to something that had just happened off camera. But the most intriguing part isn't the stare itself. It's what happens immediately after. Taehyung breaks the gaze and leans back as if nothing happened. His expression shifts again, returning to the relaxed energy of the group. Jungkook continues speaking, smiling, interacting normally with the others. On the surface, everything goes back to normal. Yet the moment lingers. Because once viewers notice it, they realize something strange about that exchange. Neither of them acknowledges it out loud. No comment, no reaction, just silence. And that silence is exactly what fuels the curiosity. Clips of the moment begin circulating among fans. Slowed versions appear online. People zoom in on facial expressions, trying to decode every micro-reaction. Some claim Taehyung looked surprised. Others insist the look carried a hint of emotion, something intense, but carefully controlled. A few even argue that the entire moment felt like a reaction to something that had been said just seconds earlier. But the truth is, no one knows for sure. That's what makes the moment so fascinating. Because when you remove the music, the editing, and the fast pacing of the interview, what remains is a raw fragment of interaction, one that feels almost too real for a polished magazine video. And suddenly, that 3-second stare begins to feel heavier than it should. The room in the video stays bright and casual, but the tension fans imagine inside that moment grows stronger every time someone watches it again. Was it curiosity? Was it concern? Was it simply a fleeting thought that crossed Taehyung's mind while Jungkook was speaking? Or was it something far more personal? Something that only the two of them understood in that exact second. The camera never gives a clear answer. And maybe that's the most intriguing part of all. Because hidden within a cheerful interview meant to showcase friendship and fun, there exists a tiny moment of silence that no one can fully explain. A single glance, a brief pause, and a question that continues to follow the clip everywhere it appears. What exactly was happening between Taehyung and Jungkook in that moment? And if that stare truly meant nothing, then why do so many people feel that it meant everything? The more people watched the clip, the stranger that moment began to feel. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was so quiet. Inside the bright, polished set of the GQ magazine interview, everything seemed lighthearted. The members joked, teased each other, and answered questions the way they always do, effortlessly and naturally, like a group that has spent years understanding one another without needing to explain anything. Yet hidden between those relaxed seconds was that brief shift. A shift that started with Kim Taehyung. When fans replayed the footage again and again, they began noticing something subtle about his expression before the stare even happened. For a fraction of a second, Taehyung's smile fades. Not dramatically, just enough to suggest that his attention had suddenly moved somewhere else. Somewhere specific. Toward Jeon Jungkook. It wasn't a playful look like the kind they often exchange during interviews. It didn't carry the usual teasing energy that fans are familiar with. Instead, it felt almost analytical, like Taehyung was silently processing something, watching, thinking, trying to read something in Jungkook's expression. And the strange part is that Jungkook, in that moment, appears completely unaware at first. He continues speaking, gesturing lightly with his hand as he responds to the question being asked. His tone is casual, confident, relaxed. But then something happens. Jungkook pauses briefly. His eyes flicker to the side toward Taehyung for a split second. The two of them are connected by the same invisible thread of attention. No words, no laughter, just eye contact. Then it disappears. Taehyung looks away first. The atmosphere resets instantly. Someone in the group says something funny. A burst of laughter fills the room again, washing over the silence that had formed between them. But for those who noticed it, the energy of that moment refuses to fade. But what makes the moment even more intriguing is what happens after the interview continues. At first, everything seems completely normal in the GQ magazine video. The members keep answering questions, exchanging jokes, and creating the relaxed atmosphere viewers expect from them. The laughter comes naturally, the conversation flows easily, and the camera captures the group exactly the way fans are used to seeing them, comfortable, confident, and perfectly in sync. Yet when the footage is watched more carefully, something subtle begins to stand out. After that brief exchange of eye contact, Kim Taehyung becomes slightly quieter. Not dramatically silent. Not withdrawn. Just observant. He still smiles when the others laugh. He still nods along when someone is speaking. But there are small pauses where his attention seems to drift again toward Jeon Jungkook, almost like he is replaying something in his mind. And strangely, Jungkook appears to avoid that direction for a while. It's subtle enough that casual viewers would never notice it. Yet when a moment is slowed down, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. Whenever Taehyung shifts his gaze toward Jungkook again, Jungkook's eyes are usually focused somewhere else, toward another member, toward the interviewer, or simply downward as he speaks. It almost feels like two people trying not to repeat the same moment. Why? That question becomes the center of endless speculation. Some fans believe the tension was purely accidental. Two friends caught in an awkward second of eye contact while cameras were rolling. Others insist that Taehyung's expression during the stare looked too intense to be meaningless. And then there are viewers who notice something even more curious. Right after that moment, Taehyung briefly presses his lips together and looks down for a second before smiling again. It's a tiny gesture, but gestures like that often reveal emotions words cannot. Was he thinking about something Jungkook said? Was he reacting to something only he understood in that moment? Or was the look simply an instinctive reaction that the camera happened to capture at the perfect time? The problem is that the clip refuses to give a clear answer. Instead, it creates the illusion of a hidden story, something quietly unfolding beneath the surface of the interview. And as fans continue analyzing every frame, another layer of the moment begins to attract attention. The timing of Jungkook's voice. When a stare happens, Jungkook isn't laughing like the others. He's speaking calmly, explaining something about the group with the same sincerity he often shows in interviews. His tone is thoughtful, almost reflective. Some viewers believe that tone alone might explain Taehyung's reaction. They argue that Taehyung may have been listening more closely than anyone else in the room, noticing the emotion in Jungkook's words and reacting instinctively. But that explanation raises another mystery. If Taehyung was simply listening, why did his expression change so noticeably when he looked at Jungkook? Because it wasn't the look of someone casually paying attention.
It was sharper than that.
Focused, almost searching. And when the interview eventually moves toward another topic, something interesting happens again. For a brief moment, Jungkook glances toward Taehyung as well. Not long, not dramatic, just a quick look. But when it happens, Taehyung isn't looking at him anymore. Instead, he's looking down at his hands. That tiny detail only adds more fuel to the speculation, because moments like that often feel less like coincidence and more like timing. Almost like two people just barely missing the chance to acknowledge something. From the outside, it's impossible to know what they were thinking, but fans watching the clip can't help imagining what might have been passing through their minds. Was Taehyung wondering if Jungkook noticed the stare? Was Jungkook trying to figure out why Taehyung looked at him like that? Or was it simply a silent understanding between two people who have spent years working side by side? The truth might be far simpler than the theories suggest. But the human mind has a natural habit of searching for meaning in moments of silence. And that's exactly what makes this clip so captivating. Because silence leaves room for interpretation. And interpretation creates stories. Soon, the discussion spreads across social media platforms. Fans begin sharing slowed-down versions of the moment. Others compare it with older interviews, searching for similar interactions between Taehyung and Jungkook. Some notice that Taehyung often glances toward Jungkook when he's speaking. Others point out that Jungkook sometimes reacts to Taehyung's expressions before anyone else does. Of course, these observations don't prove anything, but they create patterns that fans find fascinating. Patterns that feel like pieces of a puzzle. And the more people look at those pieces, the more the moment begins to feel significant. Even if it lasted only 3 seconds. 3 seconds might seem insignificant in a long interview, but in those 3 seconds, something passed between two people that cameras rarely capture. Not a conversation, not a gesture, just a look. Yet looks can say a lot. Sometimes more than words. Body language experts often say that eye contact can reveal attention, curiosity, concern, or even emotional reactions that someone doesn't intend to show. And that idea only deepens the mystery surrounding the clip. Because if Taehyung's stare was purely instinctive, it might reveal a reaction he didn't even realize he had. And if Jungkook's subtle pause was a response, then that means he felt it too. That possibility is exactly what keeps fans replaying the moment. Again.
And again. And again.
But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this entire situation is how ordinary the setting is. This wasn't a dramatic event. There was no argument, no emotional confession, just a casual interview for a fashion magazine. A room filled with laughter, bright lights, and friendly conversation. Yet inside that normal environment, something quietly stood out. Something small enough to be overlooked, but powerful enough to capture the attention of millions of viewers once it was noticed. Moments like that are rare, not because they are dramatic, but because they feel genuine, unfiltered, unplanned. And sometimes the most authentic interactions are the ones that happen when no one expects them. When people aren't performing, when they aren't thinking about how they appear on camera, when a simple reaction slips through before it can be hidden. Maybe that's exactly what happened here. Maybe Taehyung simply reacted to something Jungkook said without realizing the cameras would catch it. Maybe Jungkook noticed the look and understood it instantly. Or maybe the entire moment meant absolutely nothing. Just a brief coincidence between two friends in the middle of a conversation. But if that's true, one question still remains. Why does the moment feel so different once you see it? Why does that 3-second stare suddenly stand out from the rest of the interview? Perhaps the answer lies not in the moment itself, but in the connection fans believe exists between the members. For years, people have watched their interactions closely. They've seen the jokes, the supportive gestures, the quiet moments of understanding that appear between them. Because of that history, even the smallest interaction can feel meaningful, even something as simple as a glance. And maybe that's the real reason this moment continues to spread across the internet. Not because it proves anything, not because it reveals a hidden secret, but because it reminds people of something fans have always believed about them. That behind the performances, the cameras, and the interviews, there is a genuine bond that doesn't always need words. Sometimes it appears in laughter. Sometimes it appears in support. And sometimes it appears in a silent moment that lasts only a few seconds. A moment where two people look at each other, understand something instantly, and then move on as if nothing happened. But the camera remembers. And once the camera remembers, the internet never forgets. So the next time you watch that GQ interview clip, pay close attention. Not to the jokes, not to the questions, but to that brief second when Kim Taehyung turns his head and looks directly at Jeon Jungkook. Because whether it meant something or nothing at all, it's a moment that continues to make millions of fans pause, rewind, and wonder, what exactly happened in those 3 seconds? And why does it still feel like there's a story hidden inside that silent stare?